All right, wow. So, hi, my name's Chavella, and this is my story in Seven. So, my story begins, well, as it always does in the beginning. And so, I didn't grow up in the church, didn't grow up with the church family, but I feel my story, it does definitely have some God moments in it. And as they say, he's always with us, even when we don't believe in him. And I think that's definitely a thing. While I didn't grow up in the church, God was there, and I was raised with godly morals that I don't think I knew about, but they were definitely there. For instance, I honored my parents. They're the most important things to me, besides my now fiance. But I also learned to love other people, to be kind, be courteous to others, and also to just serve people. Those were the things that I grew up with, that I do think that while I was in the church, they were definitely godly standards that I upheld to as I was getting older. And in my story, didn't come about till when I knew God. It was high school. It was around freshman year. My mom, she became a born-again Christian at that time, and doing that, she wanted me to pursue a relationship with Christ, but I was still kind of didn't really know about it. Grew up in the church. Growing up, I knew God was here. He was real. He was the creator of our earth. I knew his son, Jesus, but that was the extent of it. I didn't know much more. As I grew up, I had a kind of a mental note that I think if I ever walked into a church, I would be judged, that I didn't know the Bible. So that was kind of my backing away moment, like I don't know about this. I don't know about this all. So over time, as I got into high school, started kind of picking up things. My mom would drop seeds every now and then, but it wasn't until junior year, right before high school, right before my senior year that summer, I came down to the altar, and that's when I gave myself to Christ. And since then, coming to Kentucky Wesleyan, that definitely was a God moment. Definitely a miracle that I needed to understand who God was and to do God's will. And I wasn't sure what would come about coming to Wesleyan. I mean, still now, I don't know what it would be when I grew up, but I still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up then. I was a chemistry major. I love chemistry, and I knew I wanted to do something with that. And so as I went to Wesleyan, I was involved a lot on campus. As I got those 4 years in, one of the biggest ones that I was happy to be a part of was campus ministries. Being the communications intern, I was behind the social media, running the Instagram and Twitter pages, and I worked with so many wonderful people, wonderful students, and getting to know so many people and growing my relationship in faith and with God, learning about everything, just who he is, who he was, who he is, and who he will still become. And it's just a blessing that I've held on to, and I'm so thankful and grateful for. And I believe a lot of my story continued to grow after I graduated college. I didn't want to leave Wesleyan. It was my second home. Kentucky was my second home, and meeting my now fiance, Zach, he became my home. And so I didn't want to leave, and just that bittersweet moment, especially I was in the COVID era moment when I went to school, so that was hard because we didn't do as much as we should have. But when I left, I went to online graduate school at Oklahoma State, and so during that time, definitely a different change of scenery, a different environment of being home again. It was definitely different. And so kind of my relationship with God, it slowly kind of just slowly was getting not as how it used to be when I was in college, more disciplined. I was reading my Bible still, as praying, going to church, serving. It was just hard because I was in a state where I didn't really know what I was doing with myself. I didn't know God's will for me, and I didn't really know what to do. Didn't know if I was supposed to stay in Vegas. Didn't know if I needed to come to Kentucky. And I was doing long distance relationship was hard within itself. And so I didn't know what to do. But in that time, I did know that God was with me. He would guide me. And in ways I did need to kind of figure it out. And kind of, because God doesn't want us to figure, we got to figure it. God doesn't want us to know exactly sometimes. I know for me, God's gonna kind of like I have to not figure out on my own, but I've got to put in the work to know what God wants to do with me. And so with that, I learned how God speaks and his peace, knowing, this is God's will for me. And during that time, also just learned a lot about just God in a relationship and with someone you're supposed to be with, and just how to make things work and compromise and patience and all the things, that in 1 Corinthians 13 with love, all those things. Love is kind, it's patient, doesn't boast. Just learning that not only with like my fiance, but just with other people, learning just how to handle relationships, because God made us for relationships. And so since then, from that time, 2 years came down, and I graduated with my master's, and since then I did end up moving to Kentucky. I knew that was God's will for me, and I knew that if I could, if God puts me in a position to do something, like everything will fall into place. And with that, and it's true, because that happened with coming to Wesleyan, and it happened with getting into graduate school, and it's happening now because I was able to get a stable job, at meeting so many Christ-like people. And I'm also with Zach, and that's honestly helped our relationship grow so much, because we're able to plan a wedding but also be there for each other. And I think we both needed that love language of just each other's presence and that quality time with each other, because we didn't have it when we were in long distance, and it really was slowly like hurting us. And that was something I think that was something that I believe that the devil was really enjoying, was seeing us being pulled apart. And so I think with that, just being in my 20s and getting older, your 20s are definitely a time of learning who you are and learning who Christ is also, and just it's definitely a growing decade. And because you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, and you're trying to figure out where your life is going, and with all that, still trying to figure out who God is, and because you don't have everything figured out. And even as you get older, God doesn't want you to know everything about him. You're still gonna learn new things every day. And I think just giving him all the praise and all the glory, and just giving him your all and your 100%, it's important, because as that happens, then everything around you will fall into place, and you'll feel this peace and this joy. And as I sit here, I'm still figuring it all out. As I sit here, it's my birthday, I'm 25. It's a crazy time, and I'm still learning, and I'm owning it, but I'm gonna grow with it. And I hope whoever does watch this knows that while life goes fast, it's important to enjoy it, but also to give him all the glory with it, because if it wasn't, he made this all happen. He made it everything, and he still does make everything. And so I think that just owning it and growing your faith and all the little things in between, it'll all be worth it in the end. Okay, done.
That's awesome.
I think. I'm like, is that 7 minutes? Yeah. Okay.